I'm going to continue to read from my book, Lawless Gain, where I left off in the prologue before the first chapter. People sat staring at him, sitting there alone in the corner of a dimly lit bar, seated just by the swing-hinged doors. The murmur of the people, the laughing whores, the sound of piano playing could do nothing to remove the feel of hostility that fell over the place once he arrived there. His large size was imposing, to say the least, even while he sat slumped forward at the table. They all watched him come in, buy a drink, and a room for the night. This was normal to see. What was not normal to see was that this stranger paid his due by way of one golden bullet. Now, you may think it odd, and have every reason to, that this lone stranger would decide to walk into a saloon in a murderous town and buy top-shelf brandy, sit back at a table as if carefree, knowing that all would be watching. A golden bullet. That was indeed solid gold. Was it a death wish our traveler had? Indeed. Don't doubt it. Yet, it was not a death wish for himself. I wouldn't doubt that either, if I were you. Neither rich nor dead, damned nor poor, powerless to fight the land of the scorn, torn from life, given unto hell, in memory of naught, save the day earth fell. Lawless Gain, Chapter 1. Damnosa Hereditas. A cursed inheritance. The clamor had ceased. The air had grown thick. Certain men were moving slowly, approaching the stranger from both sides. There were 6 of them. His only thought was of a phrase recalled from his years of training. Miser nobis, have mercy on us. He looked not upon them, yet he heard them, sensed them. His head remained downcast. His eyes were covered. 5 approaching, 1 holding back. Must be the leader, he thought to himself. He set his concentration on how to get through the 5 to kill the 1 pending. His name was Ned Bradshaw. He sat at the table playing 2 texts when a big stranger walked in. Jake and Cuddy sat with him at the table. Ned had been winning easily and almost ignored the stranger. But then Jake had nudged him and nodded in the general direction of the stranger. He was initially aggravated, since not wanting to be interrupted while he was whoop-ass winning as he was, finally. He had won a large pile of bullets and 2 packs of rollers at that point, and most of the bullets were actually usable too. He was well pleased with himself, indeed. But now the game was forgotten in the presence of the stranger in the bar. In hushed excitement, he cried, "Fuck you, shit on me. Jake, he must be loaded." The clamor that had recommenced drowned out Ned's excitement, his excited outburst, though it did not seem that it would have concerned the stranger either way, who carried on as if no danger existed at all. Ned locked eyes with Jake. Now the game really meant nothing. Not even a bit. Ned was the leader of a small 6-man umbrage that came with him into town. They had run the last coups out of there after a savage gunfight that ended with 8 of 11 men murdered of the prior outfit. The others hightailed it out of there, but wouldn't make it far outside the town with no weapons or nothing useful to trade. They'd be dead before the night ended. Jake was the younger and handsomer Bradshaw brother. Ned was just a taller one. It had been 6 months since he and Jake left Estek, their hometown in southern Dominia, formerly Asia, which was north of their current position. They had traveled down through the islands of Gafor, Amru, and Uma, taking whatever they found along the way of women, children, and anything of use to them. His umbrage was involved in children trading and selling. They snagged 3 kids so far, 2 from Uma, 1 from Mord, another southern town in Dominia, but on its eastern coast. They were presently being held in an upstairs room in a salon they now occupied. The children were to be sold into bondage next evening by a buyer relayed to Ned by a longtime mutant associate of his named Jasper. With Jasper's help, Ned's business had been lucrative, especially with the withdrawal of the Lawless One's influence in the world abroad. 200 buys in the last few years afforded Ned his Wind Rover, a dune vehicle that was very good for traveling deserts in Kadim. They were known for running down on isolated homes and huts, breaking in and killing the men and raping the women. After that, they'd restrain the children, put them in a big sack, and inform them that they would be killed like their parents if they made a sound. That was never a problem. The more brutal he was, allowing the children to watch, the easier the job went. He would hook the sack of children to his Wind Rover, which was powered by electricity and had a life expectancy that was incredibly long. Though Ned would puzzle over how Jasper always had a way of popping up when popping up was needed. The payoffs were too good for him to really care. And here, in his small town called Toul, in Sammy's saloon, that is all that mattered. A payoff. In this world, life was nothing. No, less than nothing. Jasper had promised the usual. New parts for his buggy, 3 jugs of pure water, not that skunky shit that towns usually had, a jar of top shelf brandy, and a real prime piece of ass, a whore from the far north that was beautiful and had a cunt so soft and warm you could sleep in it. A hell of a deal. And just when he thought things could get no better, this coup walks into his bar. A rich coup at that. Gold was an excellent conductor of electricity, he thought. Hell, he couldn't even get Jasper to throw in anything like that for his buggy. It begged to reason that the stranger might have enough to power the rover for a couple of years. Ned was a rugged-looking man. His skin was dark and tough like leather. He was a very ruthless man indeed. For killing to him was the same as breathing. From time to time, he would feel himself dying inside, and nothing would remove this feeling from him except the act of forsaking the world by taking an innocent life. He had not always been thus, of course. He'd first killed long ago with his bare hands, which to many may be one of the hardest ways to take a life. It entails watching the life fade slowly away. Whenever Ned prepared himself for the work of killing, the old memories that made him what he had become now would always return to him to torment, haunt, and to torture his wretched soul, to make anew the everlasting fire that burned within him, urging him to lust for murder. Nothing else would quench this thirst, and so the memory came in a flood as he looked upon the stranger. The next part would be the backstory of the character I created named Ned Bradshaw, to explain how he became so ruthless and evil. I don't know, some of the words I used may lead this video to be X'd out, boycotted, or something like that. So I'm not even sure if I'll continue to read this book. It is, of course, a horror novel, so I channeled whatever most horrific things I could possibly think into the story to make it truly scary. But the war between good and evil always ends with evil being destroyed. If indeed this video goes through and I can continue on, I'll try to read some more, but it gets pretty graphic. We're all adults here, right? So I'm not sure what it's going to do, but thank you for joining me, for listening to what I presented so far, and hopefully I'll get to the point where I can get this published and out there to the world. If they don't block it, I'll continue to read more. All right, that's all I got. Yeah, have a good day.